Hello and welcome back to computer programming. All right, so we're still going to be working with loops today, but we're going to incorporate a little something new. All right, and that something new is random numbers. So how do we create random numbers? How do we define random numbers? How do we limit random numbers inside of a C++ program? All right, so to get started, you're going to want to go to the guessing game activity inside of Google Classroom. All right, you're going to want to click on the zip file just like we do every other time. All right, you're obviously not going to use this because, again, we can't preview it and zip extractor doesn't help us. So we're going to click on the dots. We're going to choose open in new window. We're going to hit the little download button. That's going to send it down to our computer. If it gives you a little warning that it's might be dangerous, you can just click on that arrow and say keep. All right, then we're going to head over to our downloads folder. All right, so I'm in Windows Explorer, the File Explorer. You should see the zipped version of your folder. All right, we need to unzip it. So I right click, I choose extract all, I hit extract. Now I could just open it in this window that pops up, but instead I'm going to clean up. All right, I'm going to get rid of the zip file because I don't need that anymore. So I'll right click and choose delete. All right, and then I'm going to drag this into my computer programming folder so that everything is nice and neat and I've got all of my folders and all of my programs in one spot. All right, so once I've done that, double click on this, double click on code blocks, and then have it come up. So as this is coming up, what the lab is going to be today is you're going to be writing like a little guessing game. So the program is going to generate a random number, and then the player is going to get 5 guesses. And each time they guess, the program is going to tell them whether their guess was too high or too low. If they get the number before their 5 guesses are up, they win. If they don't get their number before the 5 guesses are up, they lose. All right, so that's the general program that you're going to be writing. But let's start with just random numbers. How do they work? How are you going to create them? All right, so we've got some code here that's going to kind of demo random numbers for you. And if I run this quick, I'll just show you that it's generating random numbers. All right, so if you kind of scroll through this, you can see that this is just giving us random numbers between 1 and 20. And I'm getting a whole bunch of different random numbers. And then this is giving random numbers between 0 and 9. Just pay attention, 15, 19, 12. If I run this again, all right, I'm getting totally different numbers. All right, now it's 7, 8, 8. So again, random numbers being generated. So let's talk about how we do this. All right, so we've got our program here. We've got our include statements up at the top. There is one new include statement here, include time.h. This just gives us access to certain things that like access the clock of the computer, and we're going to need that, and I'll explain why in a second. So very first line of code in this program is this srand time null. All right, and this is really important because it turns out that computers don't actually know how to be random, or better yet, can't be random. All right, if we think about a computer, it's just a bunch of electrical signals flowing through logical gates at super high speeds. Right? Logical gates, by their nature, are not random. All right, so computers don't really have a way of just being like of, let's say, rolling a die or flipping a coin. You know, they follow a set series of rules to perform some sort of calculation, and everything's very regimented and everything's very structured, and we kind of know what's going to happen. So being random is actually very, very difficult for computers. So it turns out they can't be random. All right, when we try to generate random numbers, what we're really doing is we're really doing this involved calculation that basically generates what are called pseudo random numbers. So they appear random, right? They seem random, but technically they're part of some larger calculation. Now, how does this all work? Well, we get different numbers by doing what's called seeding the random number generator. All right, so again, random numbers are generated through some big calculation, But if we feed a different number into that calculation, we get totally different results. So, if you feed a 10 into it, you're going to get one set of numbers. If you feed a 20 into it, you're going to get another set of numbers. If you feed a 30 into it, you're going to get another set of numbers. So the way we make it seem random so that everybody gets different things is we seed that random number generator with different values. So what this is doing is it's actually using the clock of the computer to seed in a different value. All right. And literally it's looking at the seconds. So like how many seconds have passed. And then using that value to plug in a different number so that everybody gets different results every time they run the program. Now, because it's using the clock and the number of seconds, and literally the number of seconds that have passed since January 1st, 1970, if two people were to run this program at the same exact time, you would actually get the same exact results because the same number is being fed into the calculation. So it produces the same string of random numbers. All right. And when we're in class, what I usually try to do is have everybody like hit run at the same exact time. And what you'll see is not everybody will get the same results because not everybody hits it at the same exact time or their computer clocks are a little different. But at least a group of people will end up with the same exact results because they're running it at the same exact time. So this is really important because it basically forces you to get different numbers each time. Now, you don't have to do this over and over and over again, all right? You just need it once at the very top of your program, all right? Once you've done it once, you never need to seed it again. So this isn't anything that has to be done like every time you're generating a random number. We just do it once. Now, I do want to show you and prove to you what happens if you don't have this. So I'm going to comment this out really quickly. I'm going to rerun my program. Whoops, where are we? All right, so there's my program. Notice this time I got 2, 8, 15, 1. All right, so the first 4 digits were 2, 8, 15, 1. I'm going to close this out. And because now I'm not seeding this, watch what happens when I run it again. All right, 2, 8, 15, 1. Watch what happens if I run it again. 2, 8, 15, 1. All right, so you would get the same answers every single time without this one line of code. Now, if I put this back in and I recompile it, now I'm going to get totally different answers once it actually comes up. All right, 29, 15, 11. All right, so this is really important anytime we're writing a program with random numbers, because without this, you're just going to keep getting the same results over and over and over and over again. All right. Now, how do we actually generate random numbers, and how do we do it so that they're constrained inside of a range? All right, so here I have a for loop. All right, so this is just so that I can get lots of numbers over and over again. All right, you don't need to have a for loop when you're generating random numbers. This is just so that I can generate lots of numbers so that you can see that each one is being generated randomly. So again, from last class, this is our loop counter. So it starts at 0. The loop keeps going as long as I is less than 50, and I gets 1 bigger each time. All right, and then inside the loop, we're just printing out a random number. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this %20 plus 1 so you can see what happens when you just say cout rand all by itself. All right, so I just got rid of that %20 plus 1. I'm going to recompile this. All right. And notice now that I'm getting these kind of big, large, all over the place random numbers. All right, so when you just use rand, you're getting these big, large numbers. Now, what does this %20 plus 1 do? Well, we've learned that the percent sign is the modulus operator. So effectively, we are dividing those big, large numbers by 20, right? And when you divide by 20, the only possible remainders are 0 to 19. All right. 0 means that 20 went in evenly, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19. You can't have a remainder of 20, because if there was a remainder of 20, you would just divide one more into it. All right. So by dividing by 20, it restricts us to values from 0 to 19. And then by adding 1 to it, it shifts it from 0 to 19 to 1 to 20. All right, so this is sort of the general format we can use if we want to generate random numbers. So if I wanted a random number from 1 to 100, right, I would divide by 100. That gives me remainders from 0 to 99. And then by adding 1 to it, I shift it from 0 to 99 to 1 to 100, right? But this allows me to kind of specify the range upon which I'm getting my random numbers, right? Because the remainders are restrictive, right? If you divide by 20, the only remainders are 0 to 19. If you divide by 100, the only remainders are 0 to 99. If you divide by 1,000, the only remainders are 0 to 999, all right? But we can use these remainders to sort of restrict what we get back. All right, and then again, this one down here is just showing the similar situation. This is where I didn't add 1 to it. So if you're not adding 1, just realize that it's going to give you from 0 to 1 less than that number. So when I run this, I won't ever get 10 in that bottom loop. And again, you can see that there's no 10s here. The smallest value I can get is a 0. The largest value I can get is a 9. All right, so sometimes kids do percent sign 10 and they're like, okay, that's going to give me 1 to 10, right? No, that's going to give you 0 to 9. And then you have to shift it by adding or subtracting whatever values you want to add or subtract, so that you can start to limit what you get. All right, but in this way, we can have a program that sort of generates random numbers. All right, again, we just need this line once at the top, right? This seeds the random number generator. And then again, it's not the loops that I have here aren't important. It's this code right here. All right, this code right here will generate a random number. And I can have that as part of a cout statement, or if I want to put it in a variable, I could go int x equals, rand percent sign 5 plus 1. And that would be giving me random numbers from 1 to 5 and then storing it inside of a variable. All right, so it's not that I have to have them in a loop. It's not that I have to have them in a cout statement. I can just use this anytime I want a random number and then perform whatever calculation I need to sort of restrict it to the range that I need. All right, so that's how you do random numbers. What's the program you're actually writing today? So you are going to be creating a guessing game. All right, so the program will start by generating a random number from 1 to 100. All right. The user will then get 5 attempts to try and guess the number. If the user guesses correctly, the program should congratulate them on being a super awesome guesser and ask if they want to play again. If this user says no, the program can end. If the user says yes, it should generate a new random number and start the process all over again. If the user does not guess correctly, the program should ridicule the user and inform them whether the actual number is higher or lower. Of course, if it was the user's final guess, the computer should let them know what the correct number was, tell them they lost, and ask them if they want to play again. All right. So a couple of hints here. You can use a while loop to keep the game running, and I'll actually demo that in this video. And then the guessing code should happen inside of a for loop that's set to run 5 times, right? Because again, they get 5 guesses, and once those 5 guesses are up, their turn is over. But the code that happens on each of those guesses is effectively the same. So we're going to be putting that code inside of a loop and just setting that loop to run 5 times. And then last but not least, if you need to end a loop early, perhaps because somebody guessed the correct number, there's generally 2 ways you can do that. You can change the value of the loop variable. So like, let's say you were saying, I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. If you change the value of I to 10, that will instantly end the loop because it's no longer less than 5. The other way you can instantly end a loop is just by putting the word break and a semicolon in, and that will instantly cause the loop to end and send you outside of the loop. And then last but not least, just try to use functions where appropriate. So if you find yourself duplicating code at some point, it might be a better idea to turn that into a function and then just call your function instead of writing the same code again and again and again. All right. So in terms of getting started on this, all right, you've got this right here that's showing you how to generate random numbers. When we're commenting out code, leave this srand up at the top here, all right? Every program needs this, and it just needs it right at the top. So there's no reason to comment this out. Let's just do /* right below the srand so that we're leaving that in there. And then right under here where I made that little int x, I can do */, and then start writing my program here. So my very first line is just this srand that seeds the random number generator. I can leave that up top because I do need that. And then I can start my program down here. So as far as what you're doing, all right, I could start with setting up that while loop that I said I'd help you set up. So I could create a variable, say, I'll call it again. And I'm going to set again equal to 1. And then I'm going to say, all right, while again equals 1. Right? And that's inside of parentheses. Then I'm going to hit enter, make my curly braces. And then down at the bottom here, I might have a message that's just like cout. Do you want to play again? And then I could put a little note in here, 1 equals yes. 0 equals no. Let's see, I'll put an endl in there. And then I can just cin again. All right, so basically any code I now put inside of this loop will keep happening again and again and again and again and again and again and again until eventually I hit 0 and then I get outside of the loop. So in terms of sort of what's happening at this point, all right, you're going to need a variable for your random number, all right, the number that they're guessing. All right, so you might have a variable for int random num that they're guessing. All right, now I'm not going to show you how to put the initial value in that, but instead of leaving this blank, you might want to put in a random number from 1 to 100. All right, again, using what I showed you up here as an example. All right, we might have a variable for them to guess. All right, so they're going to need to have a variable so that we can take in their guesses and keep track of their guesses. And then inside of here is where you're going to set up your for loop. All right, this is going to be the for loop that controls them and gives them 5 guesses. All right, so you're probably going to have a for loop inside of here. And then inside of that for loop is where you're actually like letting them make their guesses and then telling them whether they're too high, whether they're too low, or they guessed correctly. All right, so again, this is just sort of a general outline of what your program might look like. All right, this is the variable that's going to keep the while loop going until they type in a 0. This might be the variable that you use to keep the random number stored in that they're trying to guess. This might be the variable you use to actually record their guesses. And then again, you'll be setting this loop up and writing the code inside of here that actually handles the whole game aspect of it. All right, so hopefully that gives you a place to get started from. Just be careful, if you're writing down exactly like this. I don't think this will compile right now the way the for loop is written because I don't have the pieces in there. Let me check that. Yeah, it's going to give me an error here. What if I put in this and this? Will it run then? Yep, and it'll run. Okay, so again, I'm not showing you how to set up the for loop, but if you're copying this and you want to have a starting point, by putting those two pieces in there, it'll at least not give me an error so that you can compile and make sure that you have everything else. All right, so again, hope this was helpful. Obviously, let me know if you have any questions, and we will go from there. All right, have a great day.